What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of having my brother. He is one of the co-hosts of the Keyboard Warriors MMA podcast, literally everywhere that you can find your podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts. I literally religiously, week to week, follow what these guys are doing. He is the Gem City Jesus. He is the one and only Fred Kirby. Fred, what's going on, my brother?
My man, my man. I'm good, bro. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. Listen, that introduction that you had there with the fucking TVs, that's fancy, Jack. See, we don't got that on the Keyboard Warriors. It's just me and Eddie's ugly mug that come on immediately when you're fucking with us. That was a whole thing you had there. I like that. That was good, Jack.
I appreciate it, but again, I'm an open book. So Fiverr, Fivrr, dude. I mean, if you can't fucking, I'm not a technical person. If I
Same.
told you what that cost me, you'd be like, "What in the fuck? Like, why didn't I do that shit?" So
Ah,
yeah, so I encourage everyone, like, fuck, if this is what you want to do. Just like you guys encourage me, like, yo, you need to get on fucking StreamYard, Jack. I think that those are your exact words to me when I was on
yeah.
earlier in the pandemic. Most people will say earlier in the year, but this year is 2020, so we can actually say earlier in the pandemic.
Oh yeah. This year's been fucked completely.
Yeah, man. So I mean, shit, dude. I mean, we were talking, kind of a bit off air about how you started, starting initially with the Standard Bang podcast and everything. But like, how did you get like involved in this crazy world of MMA?
Okay, so what do you mean? Do you mean me watching the sport or getting involved with doing like podcasting and this sort of thing?
We'll do one and then the other. How about that?
Okay, well, let's start from the fucking very beginning. The very beginning. Okay, I'll tell you the whole goddamn story. Listen, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Okay, and we're in the election season right now, so most of you might see Ohio and think cows and farmland and shit like that. Not necessarily. In Dayton, where I grew up at, it's the fucking concrete jungle. Dayton is known as Little Detroit because it's a lot like Detroit. It's very similar, but just smaller. So when I was growing up, I went to school with predominantly black kids. We all played basketball and football. I found out very early on that I fucking sucked at both of those, and I was never going to be able to compete with them young brothers playing basketball and football. I just didn't have it in me. So I discovered Taekwondo when I was young, and I got it. And you ever like do a bunch of shit and not you ain't good like baseball? I tried baseball once. I fucking sucked at baseball because I can't do fuck all with my left hand. I tried to catch that ball. It hit me in the mug. Fuck baseball. I'm out of here. I'd never played baseball again. This one ain't for me. But then you do something and you're good at it immediately. Like you just take to it. That was Taekwondo for me. I remember the first time I sparred in Taekwondo, they were laying out the rules, and the rules were very simple: hit him and don't get hit. And I'm like, no shit, no out of bounds, no fucking bells, no, like all I got to do is just hit this guy and not let, that was it. And I remember that moment of clarity and being like, oh, I can do this. Like I can fucking kick this guy. Like this will be easy to me. So I got into martial arts very young. It was the one thing that I was sort of actually naturally good at. Um, and then I got older and fucking lazier, teen years, fucking marijuana rolled around. I ended up fucking dropping out of karate and being a dumbass and sort of letting that part of the dream go. Fast forward to the beginning of the UFC when Hoist Gracie first came out. I was really young. Fuck, I don't know, man. Maybe 12, 13 when like UFC 1 was happening. So I was watching it live, but I wasn't really into it like that. You know what I mean? I was interested because I was into the WWF at the time. So I was sort of going through that. I had Mike Tyson was the man. So I was interested, but I had no fucking idea what jiu-jitsu was. So I let it go until season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter. And that sort of brought me back around, and it reminded me of why I liked MMA. And to be fair, I've just been completely addicted since. Ironically enough, right at the culmination of season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter, I had my first child. Um,
Really?
yeah, and so if you're a fucking decent parent, you can't really party or do nothing no more. So my life sort of revolved around the UFC pay-per-views monthly. Like I wouldn't do shit all month, and then that one night a month, my old man would watch my kid, and I would get fucking annihilated. We'd watch the pay-per-view. I'd have all my friends over, and it became sort of a focal part of my life. And I loved it. All my friends loved it, and that's when Chuck Liddell and Rampage it was sort of just becoming mainstream and getting very. My friends were starting to get into it, and you could sort of have part. It was like a kind of like the old school Mike Tyson days there for a moment. Like it was actually a big deal. All my friends would come over and shit.
Oh my God, that's I mean that's incredible. I remember because we were in similar age, but anytime like Julio Cesar Chavez and Mike Tyson fought, like everybody in the apartment would come down, in potluck. It's
Oh yeah.
just like and those are things. I mean, people were actually like dragging the fucking big ass like big screen tube TVs out in the foyer of the fucking apartment building, and everybody like we're talking like you know probably about like 30 deep, just like everybody cooking and everything like that. Those are seminal moments. But I mean, that is something, I mean, of similar kind of sort that, kind of brought you in.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you're very influenced by what your parents or what your older peers do. My old man was a big boxing fan, a big Bruce Lee fan. So that shit was like cool in our house. Like, I wasn't like my dad didn't hunt and fucking shit. We didn't go fishing and hunting and shit, but he liked Mike Tyson. He liked to watch boxing and fucking karate. He thought Bruce Lee was the baddest dude in the world and shit. So that shit sort of bled over into me. And I always really enjoyed it. Now, here's the interesting thing. Once I got into the sport, I loved it, blah, blah, blah. I forget what happened, but somehow or another, shout out to championship.rounds.com. I don't even know if they fucking exist anymore, but they hit me up and they offered me a writing spot, writing about fights at the end of the cards. And I thought, fuck yeah, this is cool as fuck, man. I get the fucking, I'm going to do me a little something. Well, as I told y'all earlier, my funny ass dropped out in the 10th grade. So I found out real quick, I'm not very good at writing. Like, I don't express myself well in written form. And I did about 3 events. And on the 4th event, I had the homeboy fucking email me and he's like, listen, we like your enthusiasm, but you're using a lot of the same words. Like, we need you to come to find out this motherfucker was a sophomore in high school. And I'm like, you know what, buddy? Like, I don't think I'm good for your writing thing. But I at that moment, I sort of discovered podcasting and I was like, okay, well, I can't write. That's not my thing, but I do like to fucking talk and I do express myself well verbally. So at this time, I find this dude, what was his name? Rich something. I called him the Vanilla Gorilla because the motherfucker just had an avatar of a white gorilla, but he did this sort of MMA podcast called the MMA Live Chat Hour. And I got on that, and that is where I met Eddie Law. That's where I met the homeboy Jeremiah. And shout out to fucking Rich, but he was a bit older. I think he had a lot of shit going on. And then we just kind of became the new breed, man. Me and Eddie was like, yo, let's do this. Let's do a podcast where we sort of talk our shit. And back then I remember everybody was they didn't want me on podcast, Jack, because you couldn't fire bash. They didn't want you cussing. I was way too abrasive. And me and Eddie was like, let's start our own podcast where we sort of say whatever the fuck we want. We're not on here to trash the fighters, but we also don't want to bite our tongues because we think it's going to cost us a fucking interview.
No, 100%. And I'm glad that you mentioned the great Eddie Law, who actually will be on this very podcast tomorrow. So we're doing a whole kind of keyboard warriors kind of tie in here. But I mean,
Eddie's the man.
yeah, dude. I mean, you guys both are, and like I said, what you guys kind of expounded on me and what you could do in this medium. I mean, I thank you forever, But he and I are kind of traditional radio guys, right?
Yes,
And
yes. I think you guys both went to school for it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, it's weird because like even still, I think it scarred me, right? Because like sometimes I can't be as free because I'm all like, oh, FCC, and then like I have to literally like after 200 episodes and 4 years of doing this, like whatever, like oh, I don't have to worry about any of that shit. Like this shit is just gonna go on YouTube. Like this is,
Right.
we're just talking here, and again, it's so freeing. Now, obviously, people like yourself, people like Rogan, you don't necessarily have to fucking have degrees. And that actually, I think a degree in a broadcasting background actually kind of impedes your whole growth because again, it's almost like going to like like an MMA school, right? And getting taught the wrong way, right? It's some fucking Rex Kwando, type motherfucker, and you're like,
Sure.
yeah, I can fucking just poke you, and this motherfucker's gonna fly 30 feet.
The
Like,
Tai Chi guys.
yeah, 100%, and then you get to school and you're like, oh, none of that shit works, right? So you kind of like, oh man, I spent all this time, with that one fucking, pinch knockout and shit like that. And then, it took me like 6 weeks, but I fucking expounded that. But I kind of almost wish like I hadn't found that other thing. So that's kind of where I find myself. Like I wish I could be like that, but like listening to you guys, listen to Rogan, listen to Joey Diaz, I'm like, again, fucking Joey Diaz. I mean, just a comedy that motherfucker would. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Rogan has his podcast now, because names like Ari Shafir and Segura and Diaz, right? Like nobody would fucking give a time of day. Bobby Lee, you name them, right? Couldn't get spots to save their life at the Comedy Store and other clubs and shit. They're too dirty. And then fuck, they're the biggest names, not just in comedy, but in podcasting as well.
Exactly. And that's where we're at. I won't mention no names, but I've had a couple very big, um, dominant outlets reach out to me and sort of want to fuck with me, but tell me outright that I would have to change my personality. I would have to, I cannot say fuck. You can't say cocksucker or cunt for sure. You can't be fight. You can't call Paige Van Zandt a bitch because you're fucking half stoned on the podcast. Like, there's just a lot of things. We enjoy your takes. We think you're funny, but you got to clean it up. And for a moment, with one of the bigger places that actually reached out to me, again, I won't say no names, but I thought about it because I thought, fuck, I've been at this podcast thing for a long time. It's really cool to get some recognition. But then to your point about Joey Diaz and them, I thought, man, fuck that. I'm gonna do me. It's not like, listen, it wasn't. I'll tell you this: it wasn't ESPN, it wasn't CBS, it wasn't. So it was a sort of an MMA website. It would have probably been good for me to sort of get a little more notoriety. But you know what? I'm gonna do. As we were talking about before we went live. I like you. I enjoy this. If this thing gets 1,000,000 views, I'll be fucking ecstatic. If it gets 13, I also don't give a fuck. I hope it does good for you, but I enjoy you and us having this conversation and talk about shit that we enjoy. So that's why I've got nothing to lose with this podcasting thing. I hope it goes good. Lord knows I do. That would be great to wheeze our way into this. And I would love to do it and bring all my homeboys, bring you and bring Eddie, and all of us get paid to do what we love. That would be amazing. But if not, I don't care. I'm not beholden to no human cocksucker about this shit. We do what we want to do and we have fun doing it. If people like it, that's great. And if they don't, they can fuck off.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just like sometimes, maybe, that one opportunity. And I had kind of a similar experience, just uh like last year, this time last year, where like a kind of notable kind of I guess you would say a hive of like pro wrestling MMA content on YouTube, right? They had a studio and like had to have a reel and everything. And I know it's kind of weird, but I've lived in LA for gosh, since I was like 9 and have never done a reel, never been to an audition. Don't actually, I like LA with or without Hollywood. It's
Sure,
like,
sure. Right.
yeah, right. So, and now all of those hosts are not just my friends, but they're all doing their own thing, and that studio is defunct. And I actually had one of the hosts told me, like, no, fuck, like you actually were ahead of the game, and it's just like it's validating, but also like it's free. If this is what you want to fucking do, you can do it, right? I mean, I remember walking in and I'm like maybe what 8 blocks away from a Best Buy, right? And my kid, who's now 13, wanted to go, he loves fucking Best Buy. Who didn't at 13, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
fucking all the type tech shit, the fucking game shit and everything like that. So he wants to go, and then I walk in and they actually have, this was like 3 years ago. They actually have a podcast section where they have all your snowball mics and fucking processors. This is what you pair with this, and little fucking interactive videos and showing you how to do that shit. And I was just like, man, that was an earth shattering moment, because I was like, fuck, anybody could do this, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody can do this, right, what is going to make yours stand out? And that's kind of a principle that I've lived my life by, right? Say if you're at a library, if you're at a Barnes and Noble, whatever the fuck, right? And you're in a room full of biographies, right? What the fuck is going to make somebody come and pick yours, right? Out of all of the hundreds that are there at just that location, right? Is it the fucking the colorful shit? Is it the fucking cursing? Is it the smoking? Is it whatever the fuck that makes you, right? Because that's one thing, and everybody kind of harps on social media and all this stuff. But again, if you wanted to do something in your life, right? I mean, we live in a time of an Instagram ass selfie model. Like that fucking exists. And it pays way the fuck better than what I did, and this is even before fucking OnlyFans. That's a whole nother stream of income. I've got friends that do it, and I'm looking at the zeros. Holy shit, it's phenomenal. But again, whatever the fuck you want to do, you can do this, and especially at a time where people are losing their jobs, losing their unfortunately health, life, all of the things that the linchpins of security, right? This year has kind of thrown all of the fucking chips just like fucking all over the place, right? Just fucking do you, right? And that's one thing. Like Rogan had a bunch of fucking people over the years that he didn't say. It came to light obviously after he got the Spotify deal, but like people that wanted to purchase a podcast, like big fucking companies, and give him whatever. But he's like, "Fuck you guys weren't there at the very beginning. Like this was mine. Like, and you're gonna take a part of me and then give me a little bit." And again, that's kind of the antiquated, augmented kind of acquiring of property and shit that corporate businesses do. But like, fuck, look, he held out for fucking what 10 years. So if you put 10 years into something, I don't care if it's fucking water polo, fucking, tabletop, beer pong, or fucking a degree, right? If you put 10 years and really fucking put your earnest fucking mindset and heart about it, something will fucking work out.
For sure, for sure. Listen, I'm gonna tell you a little story. I got a friend of mine. Okay, I've got a bunch of friends who have been trying to be rappers or in bands, music wise. Okay, I've got a good buddy of mine who has been in bands. He was in a metal band. He's doing his rapping thing now. He was in a relatively successful indie band not too long ago. And he was taking it super seriously, dog, performing every weekend, actually starting to do okay, getting a little buzz in the city. I mean, let's not get crazy, but like shit was going okay. Sending demos out to everybody. One time he got a response from somebody at a big record label, right? He gets the email back. It's like fucking RCA or some bullshit like that. He's like, holy fucking, oh shit. He clicks the email and it's a response. It's not an automated. It's a response from an actual lady or whatever. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically she says something like this, like, listen, I don't normally do this, but I'm about to give you a diamond of advice. Do not worry about sending us your mixtape. Do you. And when you build enough buzz and when you're ready, we'll come find you. And that was very poignant to me. It's like, you could spend your time DMing Luke Thomas or Ariel or the Schmo or just trying your best to get it, check out my podcast. I thought about doing that for a while. Check it out. Give me some advice. I think the best thing to do is just fucking tunnel vision, man. Do your thing. Have confidence in what you're doing. As you said before, make sure that you're standing out. And listen, you know how you stand out? You need to be different and stand out if you want to set a tone. And you know how you do that? It's the easiest thing in the world. Be your fucking self because there's only one of you. I know it's hard to do sometimes, and some of you guys are lame pricks, but be yourself. When you start trying to do something, that's how you end up being like all the other people. I guarantee you, there ain't nobody like me in MMA podcasting. Now, I might not never get nowhere, but I do guarantee you that there is nobody doing what I do because I'm just doing my goddamn thing. Love it or hate it. This is what I do. Nobody else does this.
No, and it's fucking phenomenal, right? Because like now, right? Like I mean, obviously, the elephant in the room, the elections and shit like that. Fucking half of everywhere, weed legalization. You've got fucking, whether it be Rogan, whether it be Real, there's like entire fucking like podcasts. I mean, Mike Tyson, we were just talking about him earlier. He's got a weed-based fucking podcast. Like, and somebody like High Rollers BJJ. So again, sometimes if you are adamant enough, sometimes shit circles back to where you are kind of the innovator, whether you know it or not, or whether the world knows it or not.
Sure, exactly. Again, it sounds so trite, but what that fucking prick Shakespeare say, to thine own self be true. That was some real ass shit. Be yourself, man. There's only one of you. If you really want to stand out and be authentic, it's very simple to do. Just be yourself. As weird or as strange or as quirky as you may think you are. And that's another thing I've realized too, especially today with the internet. A bunch of y'all are fucking weird. Maybe that's why I'm not famous, because y'all are strange. I see ASMR. I didn't know that was real. Little Asian broad just with fucking 13 million views. I've been podcasting for 100 years. I get 62 views. This broad sucking down ramen's got 3 million views. Fucking sponsors from Best Buy and shit. So be your fucking self, dog. Like, there's music out there. I've got homeboys that do music, and I'm very honest. I'll tell them, like, listen, I think this sucks, but do not listen to me.
Yeah.
That I thought Typo Negative sucked. I'm not a big fan of Rick Ross. I just don't like his voice. He's fucking huge. I mean, you do you. Don't worry about what everybody else says, because who knows, man? There could be millions of people out there that relate with you and that you're going to resonate with. But you got to be true to yourself to find that.
100%. So, I mean, this authentic sense of self, right? Like, I mean, obviously, this is something that at least I think, transfers to podcasting life very fucking well, right? But like, where did you get this? Obviously, you were talking about, like leaving school in the 10th grade and all this shit, and, not having, I guess, the common vernacular of a, straight lace broadcast journalist. So, like, where did this confidence come from?
My city, I think. I say Gym City Jesus. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. A lot of people probably don't know where the fuck that is because it's sort of just a podunk nothing city, but it's known as the Gym City. It's sort of its nickname. Um, and it's really an urban, shitty city. Again, whatever you think Detroit to be, Dayton is basically a smaller version of Detroit. Um, but I really appreciate growing up in Dayton. I went to Dayton public schools. I lived, and Dayton's one of those cities too that, like, when you're from Dayton, there's like a lot of suburbs like Oakwood and Centerville. Everybody wants to be from Dayton because it's sort of where all the shit jumps off. So it's where all your little yuppie friends think you're cool if you say you're from. I grew up on North Main Street in the heart of Dayton. I went to Dayton public schools. Um, I don't like doing shit like this because I hate to be the guy that's like, oh, I had such a hard life, because I'm a fucking American. I'm a white male American. My life ain't been that goddamn hard. But Dayton has a very strong drug culture. My mom got addicted to crack in the late 80s or early 90s. And one of my best friends, Robert, his mom was smoking crack. So we would walk to school and see our moms tricking on the corner on our way to school in like 6th, 7th grade. So shit just happened for us really quick in my neighborhood. We all sort of started drinking booze and smoking dope early. We grew up really fast, but I think that growing up in that sort of city, in that area, and that mentality, it either makes you or breaks you. A lot of my friends have been in and out of prison. They fucking smoke crack. Some of them certifiably nuts. And it either does that to you, or it gives you this sort of I've got 2 daughters, man. I've got to make it there. I cannot waste time on what people think about me or whatever. I've got, that shit will suck me down. And when you've got kids, you either, turn the right leaf or just fucking sink. And to be fair, that's something that I really have to attribute it to. I had kids early. If I didn't have kids, I'd be the motherfucker that you probably should be worried about at night. Like, me and a couple of my homeboys, like, you don't want to see us coming. Like, I probably would have went down the wrong path. Thank God I had kids early. And I was raised by a single father. My mom was a bit of a shitbird. My dad was actually there. He was in prison a little bit, but he raised us for the most part. So I knew when I had kids, at the very least, I had to be a decent pops. Like, I'm not going to be a shitty dad. Like, there's only so many things you get to do to really, and that's the thing. This podcast shit's cool. And it sounds, again, so cheesy, but like, at the end of the day, if you've got kids and your kids love you and you're a good pops, like, all the rest of this shit low key don't matter. Like, I'm 36, so I guess I'm a bit above the internet generation, but I hear people talk, boy, please bully me on the internet. Y'all, it's so hilarious. I got a real life with kids. Y'all couldn't bit more bully me on Facebook or Twitter than the man on the moon. I'll block you, or I'll tweet a dick pic at you. Don't play with me. Like, it's funny to me that people think they can bully you on those social media. I was bullied in real life. Like, some of them old school Eminem songs, I lived that shit in real life, getting punched in the nose by a dude named Dante from 3 grades older than me. You're not going to be fucking. I'm not worried about Twitter beef.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because I mean, that is the generation. I think, gosh, I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember this. It was this rapper, right? Or SoundCloud. I don't know. And again, this is where I show my age, right? But he basically was at a luxury car dealership in like Florida somewhere, right? And literally taunting people like with like two Louis Vuitton fucking bags full of money that he was gonna use to purchase a car in cash, right? And he's like, "Yo, come at me." And guess what happened? Somebody got at him and fucking shot him. And you know how they found out who did it? Oh, because they posted it on Instagram. The very same fucking thing that he used to goat people to get at me. Right. And then
Yeah.
unfortunately, and you're a good example, like of I kind of want to say myself, but like, I mean, if Paris Hilton can get fucked up and with all the shit that her parents did, you know what? Whatever. That's what I say about parenting. But in terms of like, him, he actually had a son, right? And
Mm.
his, the mother of his child was, and like, apparently they were beefing and shit like that. But like,
Are, are,
she
are, are
went
you
on.
are you speaking of Triple X?
I think that's the guy.
XXX Tentacion. It was in
Yeah.
Miami, Florida. He
Okay,
was
you can
buying it.
pronounce it way better than I can.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm a massive hip hop fan, and I kind of slept on him because he was a young rapper. After he died, I went back and visited his catalog of music. I'm also a big metal fan, and he had this very strange sort of like he was a very talented artist. I see why the kids liked him so much. He was a very, very talented artist. I didn't understand this until after he died because I'm a fucking idiot. But yes, and I just to clear up the story a little bit, I don't know that he definitely he was going to buy a dirt bike cash or a four-wheeler cash or something like that, and he was definitely showing it on like live, and then some guys pulled up and they did rob him and shoot him. So yes, I guess he probably shouldn't have been fucking doing that. That was stupid. But it also does suck that you know I understand what it's like to have nothing and then have something. It feels fucking good, man. When you grow up wearing hand-me-downs and all of a sudden you got real Jordans and you can afford it. Hey, look, the truth is, like, here's the thing, right? We all post on Instagram and it's very popular to say, oh, I don't care how many likes I get. Well, bullshit. Well, yes, you do. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we're all there for the attention. Of course we are. When you go out and you buy $1,000 pair of sneakers, of course you want fucking people to see them. That's why the fuck you bought them. I mean, let's not play coy here. I've got some nice outfits, and bet your sweet tits that when I put that fucking sweater on, I'm hoping somebody says, oh, hey, nice fucking iceberg sweater. I acknowledge that you saved up for fucking 3 months to buy that and it cost you a lot of fucking money. You want to, especially when you don't come from nothing and you finally get it and you want to, like all those fucking teachers and all those people that probably thought I was a loser. Check this out, motherfucker. Not only am I not a loser, but I'm fucking winning. But the sad thing is you get those fucking snaky cocksuckers that aren't winning that are just waiting for you to make a dumb mistake like that and that will literally fucking take your life for that money. So
Yeah, and I think and the example that I wanted to kind of raise is, again, context is key, right? Like, and to kind of draw it back to like MMA, right? Like, people in 2020 be like, MMA is violent. Like, I just talked to Shannon the Cannon Rich the other day. That shit that he grew up in, that shit was violence. That no holds barred, Valley Tudo, like, didn't even have a name. He's just like, here's $500, fight, like that shit. Like, that's violent, right? So context is key. And the same thing with like that, like the social media and like bullying and cyberbullying. And I mean, it does exist, and that sucks anybody that's going through it, but again, like, they don't have the context that we did of a generation before them to be like, no, no, no. We actually would have to fucking like take an alternative route from school and shit like that because these motherfuckers would really pull a gun on me.
now, to be fair, I do understand that it's different. Okay. I'm a grown ass motherfucking man, right? So like, but I have a 13-year-old daughter who will be 14 in a couple weeks. I do understand that if she gets fucked with on social media, she has to go to school tomorrow, and then that does affect her real world. So I do understand they live. It is a little different for kids that grow up on social media. They can find something that you posted on Facebook in sixth grade when you were going through it, and you share, and then they show that, and then all of a sudden you're a freshman in high school and somebody posted on fucking walls like so I do acknowledge it's easy for me as a girl. I don't give a fuck what you gonna do. Like I'm a grown man. But for younger kids who grow up, I understand that they actually can be bullied online. But to circle it around a bit to your point about MMA and violence, all due respect, if you're one of the people that says MMA is too violent or it's a violent sport, please suck my dick. and do a little I mean, honestly, uh, uh, first off, I love MMA because it fires back at bullying, and I hate fucking bullies. And you know what you don't get in MMA and in martial arts? Bullies. You'll get them, but bullies always get theirs in gyms because there's always somebody bigger and badder than you, and usually look at the kings, right? I mean, short of John Jones, he's a wild boy. I love him, but most of the kings are Israel Adesanya. He's not a bully. You know that man ain't never bullied nobody. Habib Nurmagomedov, he's not a bull. You know, Habib's not out picking on people. The
Right.
men and women who are actually, some of the most elite fighters on this planet, they're not bullies. So when those bullies stumble into those gyms, and quite frankly, it probably never makes it to an Izzy. It's probably Izzy's training partner that beats the fuck out of the bully and teaches them what the fuck's going on. They don't make it nowhere near a guy like Izzy to even have to teach them the fucking lesson that they need to learn. But I think everybody should encourage their kids to it. I've been trying to get my girls to do judo for years. I won't force them to do anything because I don't believe in that. But boy, I encourage the fuck out of it. I think everybody should get put in martial arts because it's a good thing. MMA might be slightly violent, but everybody signs up for it. And at the end of the day, these are fucking martial artists. And maybe if you've never trained, you don't exactly get what that means. But these people know what they're doing. They're trying to test themselves. A lot of them, not to sound cheesy and corny, and I do realize, settle down, chill, son, and I realize it's just a fist fight in your panties on a Saturday night. But some people are on a spiritual journey. They're trying to test themselves. They're trying to see exactly how far their body will go and what they can do and what they're fucking capable of, man. It's bigger than that sometimes. It's not just two dudes in their panties beating the fuck out of each other. Sometimes it is a little more than that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the thing. It's just like for me, a lot of people forget the arts. Even the practitioners of mixed martial arts will forget a lot of times the art in MMA, right? That
Sure.
A kind of
Mhm.
acronym, right? And to me, if Van Gogh and Picasso painted on a canvas, right? Whether you do jujitsu, judo, karate, uh, jujitsu, like whatever, catch wrestling, whatever the fuck, right? It's all done on canvas, right?
Mhm.
So we're essentially getting to see these people literally paint their masterpieces right before our very eyes. Like that is the most like cathartic, like amazing experience that you can get, and it literally happens almost every weekend.
In a weird way, there's really not a real defined definition for art. But for me, I think a relatively good definition for art is just something that you can't master, something you'll never be the best at, like painting. You'll never master painting. There's always something to learn. Playing the guitar, doing jujitsu. I don't give a fuck how long you do jujitsu. It's always evolving. You never can peak out with an art. You just can't. You can become very good at it, but then somebody comes along and they evolve the game. Like art is always expanding, and it's like that with martial arts. You're never going to cap out in jiu-jitsu or in Muay Thai. You're never just going to know everything. It just doesn't exist. You could do it for your whole life. That's why, you had guys like Helio Gracie who was still training at fucking 102 years old and
Yeah.
still learning things after all that time because it's art. It's just like, God forbid, if Jimi Hendrix had actually lived, he'd still be learning things on the guitar to this very day. You just don't max out with art, period.
No, and I love how you kind of equated that and shit, dude. Like you need to write a fucking book. Like I mean that put that 10th grade education to fucking good use. My goodness. Like I mean you to quote Jason Mraz, he kind of reminded me of a curbside prophet with a hand in your pocket waiting for your rocket to come. But
Well,
you know,
that's a good. That's what I'm fucking shooting for, son. That's what I'm shooting for.
oh man, but obviously in terms of like your art, right, in the realm of podcasting, right, so we alluded to you and Eddie Law, kind of connecting on that particular website, but like how did Keyboard Warriors kind of, I mean, in many ways kind of get built up from the ashes of your former podcast?
Well, like I said, man, I did the podcast with the Vanilla Gorilla, and his sort of deal was he had a bunch of different sort of guys. He had me on, he had the homie Jeremiah on, he had Eddie on, he had my boy Aaron on, that's who I started Stand and Bang with, because actually that's what I did first. I think I did Stand and Bang, and we had Eddie on, and then me and Eddie got the Keyboard Warriors on. Listen, man, what it really came down to for me, once I sort of found my niche and I understood what podcasting was, I just wanted to do it with people I liked. It's I didn't want to fake it. And when I found like I really liked Aaron, we did Stand and Bang. He's still a very good friend of mine to this very day. Son, me and Eddie don't miss podcasts. We've been doing Keyboard Warriors for 4 or 5 years now, and I genuinely love those dudes. I've never met Eddie in person. It's a very strange thing how you can connect with people through this sort of thing. I've never met Eddie in person, but I honestly consider him a brother of mine. If Eddie ever finds himself in dating, that's my man. And it's like, it's strange, but I know Eddie. I mean, we've been friends for so long. I've watched him have his child now, obviously through the eyes of social media and through, text and all that. But like, I know him now. So I fuck with Eddie. And, it's again, it's fun doing the podcast. I think our podcast is great. I think it deserves to be on some big platform. I think it's a very entertaining podcast. But beyond all that, I just like Eddie. That's my buddy, man. So like, that's what I sort of try to do now. Like again, I like you. We've had you on the podcast. I think you're a good dude. You asked me to do this. I'm more than happy to do it. Again, I hope this fucking thing goes viral and we get millions of views. But if not, I'm glad to fucking be here. So that's sort of what I gauge it on. I'm not like, oh, what podcast could I and don't get it twisted. If Luke Thomas sent me an invite, I'm there. But just because, Joe Schmo on Twitter has 1,000 more viewers and wants to try to have me, I don't give a fuck. I know you, I know my people. I fuck with my group of friends. And not to say that I wouldn't do a strangers podcast, but don't think that just because you might have a slightly bigger following than one of us that I would just be eager to do your shit. It's not about that for me. I kind of enjoy talking to my friends about this shit.
No, and that's it, and that's the community that we find ourselves in as not just I don't want to say aficionados of MMA, but definitely avid viewers of MMA, and then
Sure.
kind of entered in the realm of MMA media and such, which. Uh, the great Colin Crandall of the MMA Power Hour that you could find on Fight TV, I mean Direct TV, all over the place. But he says, great interview. Love to see the MMA media Jesus in the minds. There you go. I'm humbled. I'm humbled. But in the meeting of the minds with the Gem City Jesus himself. So shout out to Colin Crandall and the MMA Power Hour, another hashtag good brother. And you can check that out on Fight TV every Wednesday night. So show some love. And he's I've been on the podcast before, thankfully, and they're pulling the big names. I think this last night's episode had none other than the Schmo. So you guys want to check that out on Fight TV.
Let me ask you something. What do you think about the Schmo? Just quickly, what do you think about the Schmo?
I've met him in person, and I was told that at a time where it was kind of, I don't want to say a down point in my career, right? But like I wasn't seeing the results in my career that I would have liked to. And then obviously like things in the last, like since quarantine happened, things have kind of blown up a little bit more for me. But like I was told, hey, maybe you should get a gimmick, and a couple people told me that I should get a gimmick, and they kind of directed me to the Schmo, right? And I mean, again, that is a gimmick. His spouse, who's also a MMA media person.
Sure.
I mean, they're. I don't want to say they're. He's definitely a gimmick. She is more kind of the straight lace, interviewer. But for me, I
She
just
she's an Asian broad with massive tits. She's got a little bit of a gimmick to herself. And all due respect to Helen Yee, she's a good looking broad, but let's not act like she's fucking Ariel Hawani out there. They're a whole little sort of thing.
yeah, but I mean, there's definitely a show aspect of both of them. I mean, I've only kind of interacted with them once, and it was an interesting experience. Now, mind you, this was like at the backlot of what was it? It was Paramount Studios actually for a
Okay.
Bellator thing, right? So it they didn't look out of place in that format, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, no. The reason I asked that is because a lot of people hate the Schmo. because he came out of nowhere. He's got this stupid appearance. And yes, listen, do I think he looks like a fucking jerk? Of course I do. But you know what though? I ain't mad at him because that's not how you get somewhere. Like all y'all out there hating, do man, fuck the schmo, Jack. It's just gimmick. Hey, look, man, that's why you're where you're at. Hey, look, I ain't mad at him. It's working. He's doing his thing. Him and that fucking Asian broad, his girlfriend, they're out there. They're doing their thing. He's fucking interviewing Dana White. I ain't mad at him. You know what I mean? Like, yes, obviously it's a bit gimmicky, but does it really matter if it worked? It
Yeah.
worked. So who fucking cares? Like, I'm not going to hate the guy. Like, I mean, I just don't think it does me no good. Like, I see so many people on Twitter that get so mad that the schmo's got this app. Where'd this guy come from? And, bitter podcast. I've been doing pod, know more about MMA. Bro, save that. That negative energy is why you'll never get nowhere, man. That schmo dude, fucking whatever he's doing, instead of being mad at that man, you need to sort of like try to figure it out. And that doesn't mean become the schmo, but just figure out how he sort of got it right and how you're getting it wrong. Don't be hating, just fucking look at what he's doing and sort of try to take some inspiration from it, man.
No, absolutely. And Colin Crandall says thanks indeed. Much appreciated. We appreciate you, Colin, and
Indeed.
Dr. Adam Rorda. And to give us a little bit of context, he says, he's a super nice guy when he's not in character. He's just being David, and nowadays, he's not in character all that often, just being himself. And it's weird, right? Because like what we see, right? If there's like one post a day, in a million of like followers, right? I think he's got like definitely in the six figures in terms of followers, right? It can
Mm-hmm.
seem like he's in our faces every day, but I mean literally, like if he puts out one post, one YouTube every day, that's 365 days or times that we're seeing him and interacting with him, and we that can kind of seem like he's there more than he isn't.
But again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like that man's just doing his thing. If you don't like it, then do it better. Like don't be mad at the schmo. I mean, yeah, again, do I think he's a fucking jerk? Like, do I think the whole thing's a bit goofy? To me, sure it is. But what does it matter? Again, fucking, I don't think Rick Ross can rap all that well. Fuck do I know about it? You know what I mean? Like, you got again, you got to do you with what we were talking about earlier. You got to have tunnel vision. I'm sure a lot of people probably looked at the schmo and was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? This is cringeworthy. But the dude ran with it, and I'll be goddamned if it didn't work. So for all of me, hats off to homeboy. You did your thing, bro, and it worked. Congratulations. Real talk.
Absolutely. And again, that just shows, like that was his idea, whether that's him, a hyperbole kind of version of him or not, he did him. That was an idea that he had. He fucking ran that shit to the fucking end zone and look where he is now. I mean, they got an all expense paid trip to fucking, Fight Island and shit like that. I know I did it. I know, and again, that's not to hate. It's just the work that he's put in. And again, the work that you guys put in on Keyword Warriors, the guys that MMA Power Hour. There's a litany of things. Rafa sponsor with Verbal Tap podcast and the Grappling Hour. Like if Jesus, Eddie Torres of Rock and Roll Beard or podcast. There's like a legion of you guys that have been more successful. And again, for me, I take that as inspiration, and I appreciate you guys because you guys have paved the way for people such as myself. And the thing about it is, if that shit didn't happen for you guys with all of the work that you got, the years of cultivation of your product and your care and consideration to what the fuck you do, then what the fuck are we all doing, right? It's just like,
Mhm.
I mean, that if you guys don't make it, that's almost like the I guess like the MMA personality version of Tito Chuck 3, right? Like those guys should have been able to cultivate whatever the fuck to not have them fight again. So if those guys could do it, what the fuck are we all doing? Like if you're an
Right.
amateur pro, what the fuck are we doing?
Exactly. High tide rises all boats, man. It's better for all of us if we're all doing good and rocking and rolling for sure.
No, absolutely. And Jesse Velasquez, who himself is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and an IFS MMA champion here in Cali, he says haters helps the people when they hate without realizing it sometimes. That's a, you know,
Bro, I mean this sincerely. I can't wait to get haters. I swear to God, it's cliche, like that's when you know you made it. But honestly, kind of that's like when they start talking shit, like right now, I don't really got no haters. It's because I ain't really made it yet. If Daddy Fred ever gets a real gig somewhere, y'all gonna start hating me real fucking quick. And I ain't gonna blame y'all. Boy, if I get on, I would hate me too. But that's what I want. Like the schmo is hated, bro. I'm looking for that. Like that, like real talk. That's how you kind of know you made it, man. When everybody's bitching about you and everybody's complaining, that's how you know you're doing something right, or they wouldn't be bitching.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's crazy that you say that, right? And I think it's absolutely true. But Jesse Velasquez wants to know, for example, watch Colby's last fight, just because I was hoping he would lose, And again, it's putting an ass in every 18 inches. I think Jim Ross said it. I mean, as matter of factly as you could possibly do in any form of entertainment. I mean, sports are fucking entertainment. The same things that you would do if you're sitting and watching Netflix than going to the movie theater versus going to an NBA game, MMA contest, whatever. It's all an ass in every 18 inches, right? And you want people sitting there having a good time so they could have repeat business and shit like that. That all of that shit is a good thing. So whatever you do to fucking put that it into context and fucking put people in seats and make them either leave. I mean, to make them give a fuck, right? And that's the thing. If you're a heel wrestler, right? If you're a heel wrestler, you want the fucking tires slashed, your fucking engine set on fire, all that shit, chase you to the fucking outskirts of town. That's what you want, right? If you're a good guy, you want them to fucking throw, literally throw, the babies in the air, as Jim Cornette say. Like you want that shit to happen. You want, the girls to kind of tug at your fucking tights and all that shit, and so you can go back to the gimmick table and fucking slap on a Kinko's copy, your autograph, and sell it for $20. Like that's the shit.
Well, and listen, that shit works. I mean, Chael Sonnen came along just to bring the conversation back to mixed martial arts. Chael Sonnen proved that to us. I mean, the dude went from being a middle tier, middle of the card fighter that nobody cared about to one of the biggest names in the sport simply by building this persona and running his mouth. And then he paved the way for so many guys. I mean, Henry Cejudo did the same thing. Yes, Henry Cejudo is a great fighter, but nobody gave a fuck about Henry until he started running his mouth and being cringy. Colby Covington. Colby Covington is nothing but Chael Sonnen 2.0, which is why I think he'll never win a belt. Just because I think he is right in that Chael. I think he'll be right there, Jack, but I just think he is destined to be Chael 2.0. He literally same vibe. Very tough guy, hard-nosed fighter, but nobody really gave a fuck. All of a sudden, he creates this persona, and now he's one of the biggest guys in the sport, man. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. That shit matters. That's been one of my major problems with John Jones. I've just been wanting John Jones, not necessarily to create a persona, because quite frankly, John don't need to create it. He just needs to let it out. John's a fucking wild man. He's even talked about it a little bit. It's like, bro, just let that side show, and let's all either hate you or love you, but be the super villain that you were fucking destined to be. I think John Jones is one of the more tragic figures in our sport. I really think that he should be immensely more popular than he is. I mean, the fact is we love drama. The guy in the cage, just to kind of quickly get on this sort of pound for pound debate that everybody's been having in MMA, because Habib's been sort of like, obviously in the limelight. It's kind of Habib, John. If we're talking about in the cage, man, John Jones, again, I don't think some of y'all young motherfuckers really understand. Like a lot of people will make the point right now that, well, if you look at Habib's last 3 fights, they've been great fights. He's got finishes. All true. And if you look at John's last 3 fights, they weren't even against top tier competition and they were close. All true. Now, let's put this in an actual perspective and let's look at John's first 5 title defenses. John Jones took the belt, excuse me, from Mauricio Shogun Hua, who was a fucking legend at the time. He's still fighting now and he's 132 years old, but at the time, he was a legend. An absolute legend. And John destroyed him to become the youngest champion ever. He then went on to destroy Lyoto Machida, who at the time was the real life Bruce Lee. He destroyed Rampage Jackson when it meant everything. He destroyed Rashad Evans. He destroyed Chael Sonnen. He destroyed, I mean, the list goes on and on. And in those fights, people will make the argument that Habib's never been cut, he's never been hurt. Let me tell you something, son. Until John Jones fought Alexander Gustafsson, neither did he. Fucking Lyoto did not touch John. Shogun did not touch John. Rampage did not touch John. John bulldozed through all of them. So if John had quit before whoever the fuck he fought before the Gustafsson fight, this conversation is a whole lot different. I think Habib is great, but I think just to on this particular point, Habib has to keep fighting to sort of cement any sort of pound for pound legacy status. Like John's career is just way too deep. And I mean, listen, steroids and all that shit, that's a whole other different discussion. But if we're just talking about sort of what they've both done in the sport, I don't even really understand the conversation. It's not close.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, and especially like John Jones, beat DC twice and soundly, and I mean, fuck, I mean, I remember watching DC on the Strike Force Contender Series along with Ronda Rousey. They weren't even on the fucking main show. DC wasn't on the main show until he entered that fucking heavyweight tournament. He was still on the fucking Contender Series like before.
And remember, he was an alternate.
Yes.
In the heavyweight. He wasn't even supposed to be in the fucking heavyweight tournament. He was an alternate for Bigfoot Silva and knocked the fuck out of him and shocked all of us.
Yes, absolutely. And fucking Flip Barnett. That's when I knew DC was good, right? Especially, his couple fights before, but when he fucking flipped Josh Barnett, who is like literally almost a foot fucking taller, a consummate catch wrestler, jiu-jitsu practitioner, and whatever. Like, I was just like, what in the fuck? I mean, you talk about like decorated heavyweights, fucking Barnett, UFC champion, fucking King of Pancrase, IWGP. Yeah, he was a fucking New Japan fucking pro wrestling, dude. Like what in the fuck? And DC just fucking just scooped his ass up and just.
It shows you that there's levels. When people say there's like black belts and then there's black belts when they're talking about jiu-jitsu, it's the same thing with wrestling. Like, again, Josh Barnett, massive man, been wrestling his whole life.
Yes.
But then there's Olympic wrestlers. Then there's a Daniel Cormier that grabs him and fucking throws him through the air like a sack of potatoes. And it wasn't even strength. It's technique. Like, DC is just that. There are levels. Like, DC would take me. I'm not a small man. I'm not big. But DC, even wherever he's at right now after eating chicken wings, for sure could take me and probably throw me about 5 to 6 feet in the air. And I'm not really exaggerating. Like, he has such impeccable technique, like a completely different level caliber of wrestler than what we had really seen in MMA. And that's what you get with Habib too. Like, it's just sort of a different level. And you see it when they grab a hold of these gentlemen.
So I gotta ask you, right? Because I mean, a lot of people so Josh Barnett had an interesting take when most people were calling, Stipe Miocic after the last DC fight, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, and he had an interesting take on it, right? In terms of like how many times did Stipe fight in one night? Like like he had an interesting take. He got a lot of flack for it, but I actually thought he was kind of right? Because I mean, obviously, this kind of pound for pound or greatest of all time. Like, I think the greatest of all time, when you say that, like, I think it's become too overused, almost like icon or legend in WCW, right? Everybody's an icon, everybody's a legend, right? So, how does this kind of like, what would be your rubrics in terms of like breaking down like a pound for pound list? Do you do it like, I've always thought that you should do it per weight class and per era. Like, you can't compare like, like a Jens Pulver. To me, I think he should be one of the greatest of all time, but in a weight class that doesn't exist. So like, how does that conversation begin with you, good sir?
I don't know. I guess for me, if you're talking about pound for pound, I suppose it depends on what you want to do. You could do it by weight division, And then that makes the conversations, I think, a lot more concise and a lot more easier. Like, who's the greatest lightweight of all time? Who's the greatest middleweight of all time? Those are a lot more measurable. It's hard to sort of measure Demetrius Johnson's merits against Anderson Silva's merits, against Israel Adesanya's merits, against Habib, against John Jones. At that point, it's sort of exactly Hoist Gracie, beat multiple men in one night. But there's Hoist Gracie beat a motherfucker wearing one boxing glove. I mean, to be fair, Hoist was literally fighting guys that, let me tell you something. Newsflash. And to be fair, at the time, I didn't know this either. But now that I do know my ass from a hole in the ground, let me explain something to you. There was many, many, many men on this earth that would have dominated that tournament. We didn't know. Like, Hoist Gracie was not the only man on earth who knew Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at that time. There was a ton of Brazilians not named Gracie. Kazushi Sakuraba, the Gracie Hunter. Like, he was training jiu-jitsu in Japan. If Kazushi Sakuraba had been in UFC 1, he would have done the exact same thing. And I'm not trying to hate on Hoist. I'm just adding a little perspective that Hoist sort of, look, we all know Hoist wasn't even he was the weak sister for the
Yes.
Gracies. We know that. Henzo would have beat the fuck out of Hoist. I mean, all the
Horion Hickson,
yeah,
fucking turned Hickson loose.
yeah, armbar by Hickson. Hickson by armbar. It's like a legend myth. Like, he finished everybody. Like, so it depends on what you're doing there. For me, I try to like sort of weigh in everything, and it always comes back to John Jones, man. He's the guy that's still here, still undefeated, has defended the belt more than anybody. George St. Pierre's had a great career. Again, if you're not doing it by weight division, which is that's a pretty easy way to do it, but I sort of like the idea of pound for pound GOAT. First off, it's just opinion, but that's what makes it a fun conversation too. I like the idea. I like the idea that we kind of concede that Ali was our GOAT for heavyweight boxing. I mean, he got beat by Frazier. He lost some fights, but like, we sort of can agree on that. I like that we got to have that discussion, and that it can sort of change. There's no real answer to it, though, to be fair. Like, it's just your opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And in my opinion, I actually don't think that like there is a greatest of all time, because I mean, as long as everybody has breath in their body, like the time, I mean, the story ain't over yet, you know.
It's true.
So that's the thing. There could be like a, I don't know, like UFC in 20 years could be all robots and shit like that, and everybody that we're arguing about and getting into fucking Twitter beefs and shit with, none of that will even fucking matter.
Well, listen, I will say this. It does look okay. It does constantly evolve. For instance, right now, what I will say right now, whatever the fuck the date is today, November, whatever the fuck, I think that Habib, present day, by all the performances to this very moment, is the pound for pound best fighter in our sport right now. Now, Israel Adesanya just signed up to fight Jan Blakovic,
Yeah.
however the fuck you pronounce his last name. If Izzy comes out and knocks out Jan in the first round, for me, that changes. That night, Izzy becomes and then let me tell you something. If John Jones fights Stipe and he fucking destroys him in the first round, you watch me jump right off ship again. And John Jones at that very moment will be the pound for pound. And so this thing continues to go until one of those guys loses and the other one doesn't. And then we sort of just see how this thing plays out. I do think that John Jones is right there. If that dude wins 2 or 3 more fights and retires, he will have a sort of, I mean, I guess you always got the steroid thing, but other than that little blemish, if you take that out of it, he's going to have a career that's going to be hard to match. Like, and he went to heavyweight. You don't go no bigger. There's sort of, you can't be like, well, if he was a little bigger, how would he? There's none of that. I mean, John Jones, if he wins like the next 3 or 4 fights and gets the heavyweight belt, happens to beat Izzy or something like that, he kind of sort of, I mean, again, you could hold the steroid thing against him and keep GSP or Habib or whoever, but in the grand scheme of things, John Jones is probably going to be the greatest fighter that ever lived. Love him or hate him.
No, I don't disagree with you at all there. Now, what I actually wanted to go is kind of looking at the fucking crystal ball a little bit, right? So Izzy, basically, let's say, right? Let's play the scenario out where Izzy moves up, faces Jan, knocks him out, finishes him, whatever, right? Becomes the
Yep.
light heavyweight champion in addition to the middleweight champion, right? And then let's say he's like, fuck it, and he calls out John Jones because, again, we know they both have beef. And let's say John Jones, into his respect, knocks out or fucking beats Stipe, right, for the heavyweight belt. That we could get a John Jones versus Israel Adesanya at heavyweight, right? And if Izzy did middleweight, did light heavy, and dispatches of John Jones, there is nothing that anyone could say that Izzy wouldn't be one of the greatest of all time.
And but I think we talked about this very sort of scenario last night on Keyword Words, because the great thing about that is, opposite of that, if John beats Izzy at that point, it's kind of like then he
Right.
beats the guy too. Like at that point, whoever sort of comes out of that alive would be like, okay, we're at an hour. I'm good to go for a moment. I don't, if you don't
Yeah,
mind
yeah,
going, but
absolutely.
I
Let's do
have
it.
I have a question, and it's very hard for me to bring this up because cancel culture and shit like that. And nobody likes talking about race and shit, but I just find this interesting, and I wonder sort of what we could do about it and what the problem is. And you're like, what are you, half black? You definitely
Yeah, half black, half Melanesian. Yeah.
okay, fair enough. You're like, again, then we can, I could sort of have this conversation. Okay, so there's not much of a black audience in MMA. I think we can agree with that.
Yeah.
They don't really have the black fan base. It's still in boxing. Mexican is basically still boxing too, but I feel like there's probably more Mexicans into MMA than your average urban black man. I think
Absolutely.
that they're still all boxing. Now, hypothetically, if the scenario that you just suggested happens, we have John Jones, heavyweight champion, former light heavyweight champion, black American man, Israel Adesanya, fucking middleweight champion, now current light heavyweight, both undefeated, quite possibly the greatest unarmed warriors this world has ever seen, about to do battle. Two black men, and yet the black community wouldn't give two fucks about it. For me, that seems like a complete waste. Like, I don't think people understand the magnitude of how great of fucking warriors these guys are. Again, fuck off with the coke, fuck off with the white girls, fuck off with all the bullshit with John Jones. I'm talking about in that cage, these two gentlemen, if those sort of things happen and they win their next few fights and they meet, it would be a shame that they would fight, and most of the black community just wouldn't care when it's like, guys, the world should not miss this one, man.
No, I agree, but I also think about maybe I, the marketing. That's where it's going to kind of come down to, right? Because obviously we saw with Amanda Nunes, right? Here we have the first, I mean, like literally the most badass female fighter. I mean, in terms of goats, like there is no discussion. She is the greatest of all time.
And
There's no
for
discussion.
women, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
for women, right? She's the
Mhm.
greatest of all time, right?
Yep.
And I mean, beat Hall of Famers like literally in her path at every pass, right?
Mm.
So, with that being said, she's the first openly gay or lesbian champion, right? And Joe Rogan basically put it like, why is it in every gay community, from the Castro in San Diego to the Tenderloin in San Francisco, West Hollywood, and every kind of LGBT community this side of everywhere, why don't they have posters like literally adorning the greatest of all time, right? In Brazil, same thing, right? So I think it would all come down to how the UFC markets it. Because if they can, obviously we saw with Conor McGregor. Now, obviously Conor McGregor is a once and a kind of a lifetime type enigma, right? It's just beyond fighting. What he is, right, to the Irish community, it's completely different, right? But they would have to market them as like essentially two Connors. Will the UFC do it? I don't know.
Let me ask you this. Floyd Mayweather is probably the one combat athlete who resonates with the black community more than anybody. And again, all y'all youngins out there might not know this, but Floyd Money Mayweather used to go as a guy named Pretty Boy Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
But old Pretty Boy Floyd, which was a very nice, very good looking, charming young man and a very talented boxer, Nobody gave a fuck about. They didn't buy his pay-per-views. So then he started walking around with $1 million in cash on him, being an arrogant little cocky cunty prick, and it worked. He became the biggest boxer on planet Earth. Now, again, to back it up, he had the talent, but so does John Jones. I ask you, what if John Jones pulled a Kobe? And I don't mean support Trump. I mean, what if the next time we see John Jones, the motherfucker's in a Louis Vuitton outfit with a diamond grill? He's got a fucking side bitch with him. He's like, yeah, I'm still married, but this is who I keep. Like, he's got this whole sort of, uh, I don't know, like a vibe. Like, quite frankly, dog, again, this is where I probably get into a little bit of fucking hot water, but I'm just going to fucking say it. John Jones sort of comes across as a bit of an Uncle Tom. I know I probably don't get the right to say that as a white guy, but it just sort of is that vibe. Like, he's like, I'm telling you, I know black dudes and they don't resonate with John Jones. Like, but if he sort of had a thing where he could sort of get that vibe, a little of that Kimbo Slice sort of
Yeah.
that the hood accepts you vibe. Because listen, John Jones is not lacking on the badassness. Like, he would be. I think, and to be fair, I do think the hood sort of like John Jones has done interviews on urban platforms and shit like that. It's not like somebody like Charlemagne the God, who is a massive voice in the black community, don't know who John Jones is,
Right.
but he hasn't captivated them. And I think that's what, look what Connor did. Connor's being himself, but he's also got it cranked up to 10. Come on, John, show up in a lime green Ferrari with a fucking platinum grill, telling people to suck your fucking dick because you're the king of the world. Because guess what, John? You kind of are. Just fucking do it. Stop with the fucking sort of riding the Jesus line. You're shooting guns. You got a badass dog. Just like embrace it. I'd love to see John get the credit he sort of deserves. And again, it would be a shame to see two black men fight for like sort of the biggest fucking legacy fight in history and the black community to kind of snooze through it.
No, 100%. And I think it's almost like Eddie Guerrero, right? Eddie Guerrero, as he was kind of, uh, the injuries were starting to kind of become apparent, right? He changed his
Mhm.
physical. He went to heavyweight, right? Much like John Jones, right? He became a persona more so than any. I mean, everybody knew that he was a technical virtuoso and came from a fucking again a line of fucking stellar athlete DNA, right?
Mhm.
I mean, both of his brothers are fucking I mean, not just in the NFL, but have both won Super Bowls in their own right, right?
Right, right, right.
Eddie Guerrero, hello, So the thing about it is, I think if he definitely develops that persona and finds a way, because again, the fights aren't as exciting, but if he goes around with Eddie, Floyd Mayweather, you know and went that route and fully embraced it, I think, yeah. I mean, at a time where he's kind of, and I hate to say that he would be in the twilight of his career, but again, like you said, the last three fights he hasn't looked like John Jones of old, the same John Jones that knocked out Machida, knocked out Hua, you know. So if he develops that persona to kind of take him to the next phase of his career, you know, I wouldn't be mad at it. But again, it's one of those things, like in terms of like the culture and community, because I mean, obviously, in this kind of like fickle type, in politics and everything, there isn't one community, right? But like the gentleman that we were talking about, the Temptation guy, right? Like that era of, like I guess like people who kind of pursue and sample that bit of the culture, then yes, he will definitely hook, line, and sinker fucking have them in. But Izzy already does that too. So again, it'd be like Hogan Savage, back in the day. Like that shit is like a immovable force and immovable object and shit.
You know what the great irony of John Jones is, though? He doesn't need to develop the persona.
It's
John
there.
Jones, John Jones smokes blunts. The reason we adore the Diaz brothers is because they've been avid weed smokers. John smokes blunts. He does blow. He gets drunk. He fucks white girls on the side. I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but low key, he is like rappers like, yo, John's that guy. This is what baller ass motherfuckers do. Like, I'm not saying that you should go cheat on your wife, but let's not act like your favorite rappers don't talk about doing that. Let's not act like that's not what we champion in our lives. Like, if John was himself, smoking blunts, partying, fucking winning championship fights, let me tell you something. One of these days, somebody's going to do a documentary on John Jones' life, and people are going to think he's way fucking cooler than they do now because he's spent this trying to, and listen, man, I don't doubt that John actually does believe in Jesus. Like, all bullshit aside, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does love his daughters. But at the end of the day, he's a fucking alpha lion king male who's been getting fucked up since college. And I think he should just embrace that because I think that's what we like. You imagine if John Jones fucking shows up with fucking, whoever the popular rapper is. Drake has done a very good job of always finding like the hood rapper, Future, back when he was like really hood. Drake's sort of bubblegummy, but he connects himself to that guy. So it gives him street credibility. This is real shit. If John sort of was like in the right circles, right videos, hitting blunts in the video and fucking just being this sort of dominant force that he is with a fucking grill, like you could paint this image of John Jones that we would all be like, yo, that's the fucking guy right there. That's like fucking Mike Tyson, Ali, and Bruce Lee on steroids. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's funny. Jesse says, "Yeah, I feel the PEDs ruined his legacy." I don't know. I mean, for you, that is a fan of all things sports. You don't think that McGuire and Sosa were juicing up when they were doing literally saving baseball? Like it fucking happens. Let's just everybody embrace it. And then Cheddar says John Jones is a party guy, and everybody knows it. Actually, Mike Perry met his girlfriend through him, and that is fact, right?
Of course he
So
did. Of
yeah,
course he
fucking
did.
just embrace it. Just fucking embrace it. Yeah,
Right.
And again, if you're a podcaster, personality, whatever the hell you are, embrace it. If you're not doing anything to harm anybody, do it because it might hit pay dirt. Again, it might be some like what is it, losers lunch, bologna on fucking hand sandwiches and shit like that. But if you do it and do it right, and I mean are steadfast in your ways about it, then fuck it. It's got to work out for you. So that's what I'm saying. And I mean, speaking of all things working out, dude, I mean, fucking keyboard warriors. I mean, for almost 5 years, you guys have been fucking hitting pay dirt I mean, like literally every week, every fucking UFC, Bellator, everything. You talk about it all. So again, for those who don't know about keyboard warriors, please enlighten them.
Yeah, listen, man. Every Wednesday night, I'm in fucking Ohio, so we're Eastern Standard Time, whatever the fuck. It's probably like 8 o'clock almost here, 8:10 or something. 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, whatever that would be, West Coast. I think it'd be 6:30 West Coast. YouTube, Keyboard Warriors MMA. We're always on there. Me and the homie Eddie Law. We try to have somebody else on. We used to try to go for fighters, but you know what? Now we like having guys like you all. We like having our friends on and other MMA media or social media personalities or what. We like to have interesting, fun conversations, man. So every Wednesday night, 9:30 on YouTube, we do our thing. Keyboard Warriors. If you just like, if you're like us and you're a massive fan of MMA, but you don't really got nobody in your real world who loves it like you do, then come talk some shit with us on Wednesday nights and talk about the sport that we all love.
Absolutely. I do it every fucking Wednesday, and you guys should too. And for anybody that wants to follow the life and times of the Gym City Jesus, where can they find you on social media, my man?
Okay, I need to get a fucking like you see that shit you did in the beginning? Yeah, according to Woods on all platforms, that's fucking brilliant. I'm fucking all over the place. At Gym City Jesus on Instagram if you choose to follow me there, or Kirby underscore MMA, Kirby with a K on Twitter. That's where you can find me on Twitter. And I'm Fred Kirby too. I don't give a fuck. I got nothing to hide. If you want to find me on Facebook, Fred Kirby, go find me over there.
Fuck yeah, brother. But again, I appreciate everything that you guys have done for me. Just being fucking friends. Like we're all fucking friends in this. We all want each other to do well. And again, like we were saying about Eddie, he and we grew up in that fucking like animalistic fucking bullshit ass radio deal where everybody shits on each other. And it's
Right.
fucking cool where you're like, hey, my friends do some cool shit too. You want to find out about it? Here's the fucking link. Like, and that's
Yep.
it. So thank you because you guys have done that for me, and hopefully I could do the same for you guys.
Awesome. No problem, brother. Thank you. I had a fucking amazing time. We even fucking look, we were worried about doing an hour. We did an hour 15, son. 15 minutes extra.
Because that's what we do. In the words of Mark Henry, that's what we do, man. And we encourage you. Not, I mean, obviously, subscribe to the Keyboard Warriors on all platforms. I have. You guys should too. And then, if you so choose it, go ahead and subscribe to According to Woods. But don't just take our word for it, right? Because you're subscribed, right? Right, Fred?
Absolutely, of course.
Absolutely. But
And
again,
share the video too.
share
At
the
least,
fucking video.
God, I do this. Everybody that watches the videos, we always appreciate that. But if it comes across your feed, your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed is not that precious important. Throw us the share. The likes count, but the retweets and the shares are what really spread the word of these fucking things. Please share. If I don't give a fuck who you are. If I see you on my feed and you're a friend of mine and you're promoting something, I automatically share it. I share it. Come on, share this shit.
Share this shit. And again, don't take our word for it. I mean, here's Zeta Zhang to convince you.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe